What's up, guys, and welcome back. Today I'm gonna go through the Caro-Kann defense. I've never done an opening video, but I think I will start a series, which I'll call it step by step, where I go through openings. And my main focus here is the transfer between the opening and the middle game. So I will show you the opening, but I will also focus on the long-term plans and the pawn structures and how to, when your opening theory ends, how to be able to continue from the middle game and be able to just get at least a good position or an equal position as black. So after e4, the Caro-Kann starts after c6. This is the Caro-Kann defense, and there are several moves for white. The main one is d4 here, but I will also go through knight f3 and then knight c3, which is the two knights defense, and also I will cover this move, bishop c4, which Magnus Carlsen plays sometimes. I'll start here with bishop c4. So the plan behind bishop c4 is after you play d5 is simply to go back to b3, and after you take d takes here, to go queen h5, threatening checkmate. You cannot play knight here to attack the queen because you get mated, so the only move is g6. And remember when we first started playing chess and we learned this trap, when you go bishop here, and let's say, yeah, just this. This is a famous trick here. Now white is threatening checkmate. After you go g6, you have queen takes with check and you lose your rook. But in this case, when we have c6 and bishop c4 and d5, after bishop b3 and d takes and queen h5, now if you play g6, there's no this check. So g6 here is the best move. And after queen goes to h4, if queen e5, then you simply just play knight here and then bishop. This is a bad move for white. So you play g6 here, and after queen h4, you go knight f6. So you defend your pawn, you develop your knight, and also we got this move g6 with tempo, so we can get now bishop g7 as well. So after a move like f3, this is white's philosophy here, to sacrifice a pawn but get very fast development. So the best move here is actually to take the pawn, and after knight f6, you play bishop g7. The bishop could go to f5, the knight could go to d7 here, and yeah, let's say something like this. You could play bishop here, d4, you could go knight d7, and something after d4, go h6 here, just to stop bishop h6, because what white wants here is after d4 and you castle, white wants to go bishop here. Let's say you go here, go knight here, yeah, just anything here. So the final plan for white is to take here, after you take, to checkmate here after getting rid of this knight. So let's say something like this, just to show you the general plan. Maybe sacrifice a rook here and then bring the other rook. So, and after takes, try to checkmate here. So white wants to create a fast attack here, and the key here to the attack is to exchange this bishop with this bishop. So after d4, you could just go h6 and even consider g5 later, and the knight goes to d7, to b6 sometimes, and to d5. You could play a5, a4 here to just harass this bishop. And if you stop white's plan from going bishop here and knight here, after castling, then white really has no compensation for his pawn. So this is white's philosophy after this bishop c4, to give you a pawn and then get fast development and use the f file, the knight and the bishop, to create an attack on your king. So remember here, you develop your knight, you put your bishop on g7. After castles, you can go bishop f5 here, and after d5, you can simply go h6. I think the engine also agrees that, yeah, h6 here is the best move on the engine, and you have, I don't think you can see it, but it's minus 1.6 here on the engine, h6, and yeah, there's literally nothing. You can even go g5. There are many moves here. knight d7, you can go to b6 to d5, a5, a4. So you have a very easy game here as black. So that was the bishop c4. Now I'll go through the knight f3 variation, which is the two knights. This is a good variation actually for white, and white gets a solid position. There are like no long-term advantages for white, but white's philosophy is, okay, I want to get a very healthy position. I have no weaknesses, and yeah, just I want to play a slow game and try to outplay you. Whereas when you play, for instance, d4 here and d5 and e5, white just says, okay, I have a long-term advantage, which is space, and I want to pressure you as much as possible. But the ones who play the two knights, they're just going for a calm game and a slower game in general. So this is the two knights. You go d5 here. After knight c3, there are several moves here for black. You could take d takes on e4, and after knight takes, you could go for knight f6 here. But yeah, white could take. White could go queen here, for instance. There are many moves. The move I want to focus on here is bishop g4, which is, I think, the main move here in this variation, and it's the most played move. I think, yeah, it is. It has been played on my database over 4,000 times, whereas d takes on e4 was played 1,700 times. So this is clearly the main move here. After bishop g4, white's most sound move is h3, asking you to just decide what you want to do with your bishop. Now retreating is possible, but it's not the best move. You'll get a lot of issues here on your bishop, and white could go f4, f5, or h4, h5, and once you try to create luft for your bishop to just run away with it, white could take. So on h3, remember here, we take. You take the knight. After queen takes bishop, we play the move e6. We took our bishop out of the chain, we exchanged our bishop for the knight, and then we played e6 and built a strong center on the light squares. So we removed our light square bishop, but we replaced the light squares with the pawn. So we have this dark square bishop, which could play on the dark squares, and our pawns which play on the light squares. So after queen takes, there are 4 moves here for white actually. We have d3, we have d4, we have bishop e2, and we have g3. Now, first I'll go through d3, and after d3, this is the very solid for white and very chill. You go knight f6. After bishop d2, white here usually tries to castle queenside and starts an attack with g4. So we go here. Remember this move: bishop b4. After white castles, we go d5, d4. Remember this. So white tries to castle fast on the queen side and attack on the king side, but we go bishop b4 and we attack his knight in the center. We grab space, and now we can take the bishop, but there's a move that I like more: a5. Now many players would actually just get annoyed here and tell you, oh, a3, just go away. We would love to see e3 here. We could take, and now there's a hook. We can go now b5, b4. Just remember, when you, let's say, just to show you the idea, when you go b4 here, don't let white go a4. So yeah, we could start with a4 and then b4, and now we have a hook and we have a very fast attack. So after a3, let's say, yeah, white could just continue his attack, and now, yeah, we simply develop. We develop our knight. We go b5. We can go b5. We can go queen b6, and yeah, we can just start marching our pawns forward on the queen side. So here white tries to castle queen side and attack fast on the king side, but we simply kick his knight back. We grab space on the center, and we defend our bishop. Remember, a3 is not good here for white because we get a hook, so we can play a4, b5, and b4. and if white just keeps on attacking us, then we can take, but let's let white take. I mean, let the tension here. If you take, you help white develop his knight. So we can take, but we can wait first for it. We go knight a6, we can go b5. The knight could maybe reroute to e5 here. We can castle. I mean, the attack here is not very scary because white doesn't have that many pieces on the king side. And also we can go c5. After b5 we can go c5 and c4 and just open the c file and kill this king here. So this is the d3 variation here of the two knights. We have also bishop e2 here now, which usually transposes into the d3. So white could also play this variation now. I mean, just to show you the idea. We could eventually transpose if white castles queenside, but usually, remember, when white goes bishop e2, then they usually want to go kingside castle. So they usually are not going for the queenside and the early kingside attack. So we go knight f6, castles. This is the most logical move. We can go knight bd7. Bishop c5 here is the most common move. So the idea behind bishop c5 is after white wants to play d4. So white goes rook d1. Okay, I want to play d4. You go here. Remember this move or this maneuver. Bishop d4. So again, white did not play d3 here. He played bishop e2. He wants to castle fast, play d4 and grab space. We play no, not d3, castles. We play we can play knight bd7. It's not a bad move, but the most precise move is bishop c5. After rook d1, we go bishop d4. You're not allowed to go d4 now. And white, yeah, has several moves here. He could exchange. Remember, yeah, this is something I want to point out. When your opponent exchanges and your knight is still on b8, usually the best move is, like in 90% of the cases, is to take with the c pawn to be able to go knight c6. Remember this. If your knight is on d7, you can consider c takes, and you can consider also e takes. So bishop here, yeah, there's e takes, there's d3 here, and you just castle after it, and yeah, you have a nice game. You can play knight here. You can advance on the queen side and gain space. You can pressure here with the queen. You have many moves, but I think the main move here for white is queen f4, threatening to take and then attacking the bishop. So you can take on c3 here. After b takes on c3, you grab the central pawn. Now white's position is not bad, so white gets this bishop a3 and you prevent you from castling. But yeah, I mean, your up pawn, you can go knight d7. Let's say rook here. You can go queen a5, attack the bishop. Later go maybe knight c5, or go c5 with the pawn and try to castle. So you have a pawn, but white has play. This is the white's philosophy here. So I'm not gonna go through a lot of details here, but just remember this plan of, okay, my opponent wants to play d4 here. I stop d4. You know, when he tries to play d4, I just go bishop d4 and I stop him from d4. If he takes, I take with the c pawn because my knight is on b8, so I can go to c6. If he tries to do tricks on my bishop here with takes, I can simply take and then take his pawn. If he plays d3, then yeah, this is my opponent admits, okay, I want to play a very slow game. I'm not gonna fight for any opening advantage. So you play normal chess. You castle, you play knight bd7, you play a4, a5, or a5, a4. The queen could go to b6 to pressure the queen side. You could sometimes consider taking or pushing. So you have an easy game here as black. So after h3, bishop, remember we take. Which move have I not covered it? Okay, so we have g3 here to go bishop g2. So knight f6, you go bishop g2, you go knight bd7 here. You could also go bishop b4, I think, or knight bd7, white castles. You can take here and take the pawn. This is not, sorry, not with the knight and hang your g pawn. You take with the pawn here. This is an idea. You can also go knight bd7 here. So not bishop b4. You can consider knight bd7, and then white gets d4 here. And once he gets d4, you could just take. You can take here and simplify. So say queen d3, you play bishop e7 and you castle. You have an easy game again. You could try to pressure this pawn. You can try to put your knight here. You could advance on the queen side. So as black, you don't have any opening problems here. You got rid of your light squared bishop and your pawns are on light squares. So this is an idea. With g3 here, I mean, white could go for many different structures. So it's a flexible move. So bishop g2, he could go for d3 here, could go for d4. He could exchange, remember, if he exchanges, I mean, just to show you, we take here and we can go knight c6. So yeah, this is bishop g3 and bishop g2. In these two knights variation, a lot of moves just transpose into similar pawn structures. So it's mainly like a dilemma between d3 or d4. So with d3 here, we could just develop normally and go maybe bishop b4 or bishop c5. Okay, usually on d3 you go bishop b4, the knight goes here and you castle. And the last move here is so e6, d4. Now on d4 we could take, and we could go knight f6. So on knight f6 there are two moves here for white, or there are more than two moves, but two moves that make sense, which is pawn takes. And remember, pawn takes, we take c takes, we go knight c6, and there's e5. Now I don't want to be afraid of e5 here. e5 is not scary at all. We go into a French defense structure. So this is a French defense, you could say advanced variation, but we don't have our light squared bishop. So we have a very stable center here on the light squares, and we don't have a light squared bishop to be imprisoned by the pawns. So this is actually a good variation of the French defense. And your opponent has a queen on f3 for some reason. So we just go back, and now, yeah, let's say bishop e2. Our plan is we can go bishop e7 here, we can go c5. So eventually our plan is to strike the center with c5. Just be careful of knight b5 and knight d6 check. If you don't want to face this move, I mean, I think you can go c5 here, and this is not scary because you have a bishop. But if you don't just want to avoid this knight jump, you can play a6 first and then c5. And remember, once you play c5, you put your knight on c6, you pressure this pawn. I will just give you a sample variation here. c5, let's say bishop here. The knight goes here, the queen can go here. You could go b5 first before queen b6 and b4, and with the queen pressure the center. The bishop goes to e7, you could castle if you want. You could even wait a bit with castling, because the position is closed. So you could just, yeah, develop your pieces first, attack the center, and you could castle eventually. You could sometimes even consider castling alongside, because yeah, you have a lot of space on the queen side and you have more pieces there. So this is the d4 line. There's also here, I think, bishop d3. I remember seeing this move before, and after pawn takes, I think white goes knight takes here and offers this pawn, and yeah, try to claim that. Okay, you get a pawn, but I get fast development. But I mean, you shouldn't be scared here. After bishop e3, let's say you can go queen d5 here, and yeah, let's say rook fd1. There's nothing scary here. There are no good discoveries, and you can eventually, or you could just run with the queen, and you go bishop e7, you castle, and you're doing more than fine. So this is something also white could do. So to sum it up, this two knights variation is is usually not the most ambitious one for white, but white gets a very solid structure and it's very hard to crack open white's defenses. But you as black also have no issues here. Remember, after bishop, we go bishop g4 here, we take the knight, we go e6, we get rid of our light square bishop, we build this light square complex, we go knight f6, the bishop could go to c5 or to b4 here, to c5 sometimes to stop d4, yeah, you can also remember this maneuver here. After knight f6 castles, we go, remember this bishop c4, c5, after rook comes to d1 to play d4, we go bishop here. We were threatening to take the knight and then win the pawn, and we stop d4. And the last thing, once if your opponent takes in the center and you take back with the c pawn if your knight is on b8 to go to c6. So we covered so far the bishop c4 variation and the two knights variations. So c6, now we'll cover d4, which is the main move. We go d5 here, obviously. And now we have knight c3. So knight c3 here is the main variation. After knight c3, there's d takes. There are other moves, but they are all not as good. You could play g6 here. You could play. I saw Artemiev. I think was it here? Maybe not the exact same. Maybe he took first and played like queen c7. I mean, you have many moves here, but the most sound move is just to take after knight takes. Now the main move is bishop c5. After knight here, you go here, and yeah, this is the main variation. I don't advise you to play it. I've played it for a while, and I don't think I've ever got like a position which I could fight for more than a draw. You have this knight bd7, which I played with some success for a while, and you go for the Carbo variation. And then you go knight f6, and after takes, you want to take with the knight, not to ruin your pawn structure. The move I want to show you now is knight f6. So after knight f6, the main move isn't to take. I mean, if white does not take, then he has no advantage whatsoever. White could go back. Remember, if they go back to g3, h5. You go g6 here, bishop g7. So just to show you a sample variation, h4 to stop h4 by black. You go g6, knight f3. We go bishop g4. Now our bishop goes to g7 here. After bishop e2, bishop g7. Let's say bishop e3. We can castle, and then queen d2. Maybe trying either castling, maybe queen side or king side. We are very solid here. We have very good piece development. Remember, just in this variation, we either want to play c5 or e5. We could prepare for it with queen here and knight here, or we could just go c5 here and after takes. We go queen and then knight, and then we try to win the pawn. We could also consider e5 instead of c5. So nothing to worry about if white doesn't take. If queen d3, there's this move. We can play knight bd7, and after, let's say, knight f3, we can take, and we win tempo on the queen, and yeah, and now we can go, let's say, bishop g4. We play e6, or we develop our bishop somewhere, we castle, we are very solid. White could play bishop d3 to defend his knight, but he hangs the pawn, so this is not an option. And yeah, going back is also very passive. We go bishop here, e6. The bishop develops, we castle. The knight could go d7. So the best move here is to take for white. I mean, if white doesn't take, then he has no advantage whatsoever. And here there's g takes and there's e takes. E takes on f6 is the best move in my opinion. So the idea here is to get a strong chain here on the king side. If you castle king side, your king is safer, and now we get very fast bishop development. So after e takes, white's main move is c3. So the plan behind c3 is to go bishop d3 and not hang the pawn here. So we go bishop d6, bishop d3, we castle immediately. Remember, bishop d6 and we castle. Queen c2, threatening the h-pawn. First we go rook e1 check. We develop our rook with tempo. Now the knight goes to e2. So we force the knight to go to e2. And now we play, remember this move, h5. This is quite a nice move. Now we protect our pawn, and now we also make it harder for white to push on the king side if he castles queen side, and if he castles king side, then we are ready for an attack. White's main plan here, and the most ambitious way to play, is to play bishop e3 and castle queen side. This is the main variation here of after e takes. I think it's called the Tartakova variation. So this is the main way to play for white, and the most ambitious one. So bishop e3, we play bishop e6. Just to point out one thing, if white castles king side here, then we go h4, a very important move. We take the g6 square from the knight, we play bishop e6, the knight goes here to d7, then we can go b5, a5, a4, the knight go to d5 eventually. We could think of storming on the king side here with g5, f5, a lot of options. Yeah, just remember this move. After castles, we go h5 to stop the knight b6, because let's say, yeah, just to give you an example, if you go here, then it gets a bit hard to defend this pawn. If you go g6, there's this sacrifice, and if you push the pawn, then yeah, the knight just starts jumping into your camp. But we'll focus on bishop e3 here. After bishop e6, we go long. White goes long side castle. Bishop e6 here before knight b7, because there's sometimes this move. So let's just where was it? Yeah, not here. Bishop e3. Where was it? Knight b7, castles. Yeah, here. If you go b5 now, there's this move. It's playable. Carlsen played this many times. It's completely playable, but we can just avoid it. We don't need to worry about it. I mean, the plan is if you take, I take here or something like this, and then your pawns get very weak. But we go bishop first. Now d5 is impossible. Castles, knight, and we go b5. Now we want to attack very fast here. So black's plan here is to push a5, a4, and then move this bishop somewhere, go queen d5, and take the pawn on a2. And when your pawn is on a4, then b3, you could just take the pawn. This is the plan of a5, a4. So let's see. Yeah, let's see just a sample. So king b1, knight b7, the knight. Remember, guys, we want to keep the light squared bishop here. As black, you want to keep the light squared bishop, not the dark squared. Okay, it's a nice bishop. You can keep it if you get to, but if your opponent goes knight f4, remember this. Bishop takes. We take this knight. This knight is attacking our light squared bishop. We need our light squared bishop. After bishop takes, we go knight b6. Let's say h3 to go g4. We go a5, now g4. We just ignore. It's very important to be fast here. So we want to be very fast on the queen side. Okay, he's attacking our pawn. Yeah, go ahead and take it. Queen d5. I want to take your h pawn, to your a pawn, and just go into the attack. The knight could jump in here. G4, b4 is an idea. A4 is an idea. After g3, we have a4. Now, if he goes here, I mean, there's a check, and you could at least win the exchange. If not, go b5 or b4, sorry, here. And after g3, a4, if white goes c4 here, we can take here first. We can take here first, but we could also take here. We're completely winning. So yeah, white has an attack on the king side, but and has two good bishops. But our plan is very clear and simple. We keep our light squared bishop here. We go queen d5, and we attack the pawn on a2. This is the main goal here. And with a5, a4, b3 is impossible. This is the plan. So this is the main line. Also, just to point out, knight d2 is the same as knight c3. We just take and we transpose. So I hope this is clear. Now after d5, there are other moves for white. There's a move here which is f3 called the fantasy variation. Now the main line of the fantasy is to take here. White's philosophy here is, okay, if you take, I want to take, and I want to have the center here, and go knight here, and go bishop c4, pressure your f pawn with the castles and the rook on the f5. This is White's philosophy, and the main move here is e5. This is the main line. After knight c3, you go bishop g4, and after c3 to defend the center, you go knight f6, bishop c4. You see a lot of pressure here. Now the threat is to take maybe, or go knight b4, and a lot of pressure here. So we go, this is the main move, bishop h5, to overprotect this pawn. I mean, it gets quite complicated here, and it's only black that has to be careful. Also, this pawn is hanging at any time. Black has to be very careful. It's not easy to play here for black. So instead, I want to advise you to play g6. g6 is a much simpler move. You want to put your bishop on g7, and yeah, just simply develop fast and keep the position a bit more closed to be able to avoid all this nonsense on your f7 pawn. And also you kill the fun for white. So after bishop here to e3 to develop, we go bishop g7. Now let's say something like knight c3. Remember this idea. We go queen b6. The bishop moved, we attack the pawn. If let's say queen d2 here, sacrificing a pawn, which is I think the main idea here for white, we take the pawn. After rook b1, we go queen a3, and remember here, e takes, we don't take back. If you take back, yeah, go ahead and solve all these issues. You cannot defend because the bishop takes. So we don't take back. We go knight f6 here. We develop. We took a pawn. Okay, take the pawn back, but just give me some development. After d takes on c6, now we take, remember this move. We take b takes. The logical move here is to take with the knight, but this knight could start jumping into our camp. I mean, this is very scary. The queen is hanging. There's this check. We take c takes. We take these with these squares from the knight, and also we open this diagonal for bishop. You will see why. After bishop d3, we castle. Let's say knight goes to e2. I'm just giving you sample variations here. I mean, there are other moves definitely for white, but these are the main ideas here to play for. We go bishop a6. We trade down. Let's say castles. Bishop takes, queen takes, knight bd7. The rook could go to d1, for instance. We go back with our queen here to just get the queen back into the game. And now we put our rooks on, let's say, the d file. We go. So we want here eventually to go e5. But we first trade down this bishop because it has no scope. We get our queen back into the game. We develop our knight to d7. We bring the rooks, let's say, maybe to e8, and maybe this rook to e8 and this rook to d8. We could consider trading one pair of rooks. But most importantly, this rook attacks the queen, and then we go e5. And just to show you, let's say this, just to show you the idea here, just this. Yeah, we're doing great here as black. This is even winning because the knight is hanging, but yeah, just to show you the idea. We want to achieve this. So we have the open line. We develop our knight. This bishop is reactivated now. And yeah, we have a very easy game. And this f3 just... so let's go back a bit. f3 served the purpose here after takes. It served the purpose that the f3 knight is available, f3 square is available for the knight, and the center is now is stronger. But when we don't take here, then f3 is actually hindering white's development. So yeah, remember this move, g6, and let's say f3. And also I want you to remember here that we take the pawn, we go back, and after d takes, we develop. We don't take back the pawn. We go knight f6, and after pawn takes, this is very important, we take b takes. To take these squares from the knight, now we can go later bishop a6, trade this bishop down because it has not so many good squares. And we castle, this knight could go d7, and we want eventually to play e5. So now c6, d4, d5. We covered the main line and f3. So there's here e takes, sorry, e5, and there's e takes, which is the exchange variation. Now after c takes, it could either be transposed into the exchange or into the what is called the Panov Attack. So the exchange first is white exchanges in the center. He gets very fast bishop development and knight development, and he castles, and white tries to attack on the king side. As black here, let's see, bishop d3, the main move. We go knight f6, knight c6. We develop our knight attacking this pawn. c3, we go knight f6. Now bishop f4. This is the main variation. White develops very fast. Now we go bishop g5. Remember, guys, in these exchange Caro-Kanns, we get our bishop out anywhere. Not to h3. We go then e6. We get the bishop out. We close the pawn chain. We don't close the pawn chain because the bishop is not getting out. So bishop f4, go bishop g5. We attack the queen. Now f3 or knight e2. We can just move the bishop back and then bishop here, and we trade it. And the main move here is, which is the most aggressive one, queen b3, attacking our pawn. We go queen d7 here. This is, guys, this is the main variation of the exchange. So this is the variation you will see on, okay, you see it on the top level, and you also see it on the level where people know their opening a bit enough. So if you're like 1200 or 1100, usually people won't know this variation, but if you're like 1800 and above, your opponent will most likely go for this. So knight from b goes to d2. The idea is to go to f3 with this knight, but avoid the doubling of the pawns after bishop takes. e6, knight goes to f3, and then we go bishop d6. Now, it seems like we are hanging our pawn here, but not actually, because after rook b8 and queen a6, we castle. Now, if white tries to go b4, for instance, we go rook b6, attack the queen, and then e5. Remember, guys, okay, we lost a pawn, but we first kick back the queen, and now if we castle to safety. This is very important. If white tries to defend this pawn by, let's say, b4, we kick back the queen. Now the queen is extremely passive here on a3, and we open up the center. And our threat here is e4, so white has to react. And now, yeah, the bishop is hanging. If you take, I mean, your king is homeless now. He has to go here. And yeah, the position is just quite difficult to play for white. And also, if something like rook b8 here, then we could just do similar stuff. So remember, this pawn is poisoned, so black cannot take on b7. I think the most common move is just to go here with the knight. And also bishop takes is playable here with castles. And now you could even castle here. So white castles, white does not grab the pawn. You could still gamble the pawn here, and after queen takes, I think you could go, was it queen f4 here? Okay, you just attack the queen first, and you could later grab the pawn there, or you could attack the queen, and after the queen moves to defend, you could trade, and white's structure is really bad here. And yeah, you just pressure these weak pawns. So remember, after bishop takes, this pawn could be gambled on b7. But the move you will face the most, I would say, out of my experience, is this knight e5. And now on knight e5 we go queen c7, so the queen is attacked. We don't take here with the knight and get our pieces forked, and also bishop b5 is coming. We don't take this way also, it's not very good because our knight doesn't have many good squares to go to, so we don't take. We go queen c7, our bishop is defended, so after knight takes, remember, after knight takes, you could take back, but it's not so ambitious here. We take bishop takes on f4. After knight takes, okay, g takes. We have a double pawn here, but we have the open g file. Our bishop is very strong now. We want to take, and after king takes, go queen check and just prevent white from castling. And yeah, we have just a slightly open position with a lot of play here on the g file with the bishop. This bishop is strong, and also we have a strong center. We could also consider f5 later to so f5 to limit this bishop. So we have the dark sword bishop, and we have a strong pawn chain here on on the light squares. So after queen c7, yeah, it takes, as I said, is not so good. White could castle, we castle, and yeah, we just have a normal game. So castles, let's say if now knight takes, we still could go for this, then go king here, and the rook could come here, and with f5 just limit this bishop. So this is the main variation of the exchange Caro-Kann here. Now let's say bishop d3, see this. If our opponent goes for knight, let's say knight here, goes for knight f3 variation, which is also quite, yeah, it's playable, but it's not that ambitious. Remember, we go bishop here, go e6, and we get our bishop out first. And then let's say castle, we go e6. Now if the bishop goes here, we go to e7. If the bishop goes to f4, then we go bishop d6. Guys, in these exchange variations for black, trading down the minor pieces is usually good for you. So we trade down the minor pieces. This is good for us. Let's say knight here, we castle. And now once white gets out of the pin, we take this knight. Why do we take it? Because this bishop has the difficulty to go back here, like to our camp, and it could be sometimes attacked. I mean, if we let's just show you now, the bishop could be attacked, and later the bishop could be taken here. I mean, and also this knight is quite annoying here on e5, and it could be supported with this knight. So remember, once white unbinds in these positions, we take. So h3, okay, h3 we could go back, but once he unbinds, we take. That takes. Now remember this, I think we could go queen 7 first here, just to avoid knight here, and after knight takes, or we could go a6, just to show you. The rook here, we could just go to c7, the rooks could come to c5, and we play what is called the minority attack. So the minority attack, we have this minority on the queen side, we attack the majority, and we try to create a weak pawn here on the queen side. So this is the plan for black in the exchange after knight f3. It's not something you have to worry about. Just remember, we take our bishop out, we close the pawn chain. Once the queen unpins, we take the knight, and we go for our minority attack. And also, it's good for us to trade down minor pieces. Okay, so this is the exchange. Now there's the c4 here, the Panov variation. There are many things to play here for black. Some of them are quite sharp and require a lot of theory knowledge, but I will show you an easy way to play here. So knight f6, after knight c3, we go e6, we strengthen our center. Now after knight f3, now there's bishop here, you could take, not immediately, but you could take. But the main move is bishop b4 here, but I will show you bishop e7, which is easier to play. On bishop b4, you have to be able to answer queen b3, and white is pressuring our center. The bishop is attacked. The main move here is just knight, but also now bishop g4. I mean, there's a lot of pressure here. White wants to take, and okay, we go bishop e7. This is much easier. After bishop d3, remember, we develop our pieces. Once this bishop moves, d takes. The bishop moved, white d takes, white lost a move here, and bishop takes. Now we castle. Let's say bishop e3. We just have to make sure that white cannot easily play d5, and so we go knight c6 here, b6, bishop b7. So let's see. Yeah, we could go a6, b5, knight here. Let's see, castles. Okay, d5 is playable, but white hasn't castled yet. We go b6, bishop here. Yeah, we could go knight b5, knight comes here to d5. So we have a solid position, and the rook could also come to the c file. So nothing to worry about. So remember, we go bishop here, e7. It's a simple variation, and after bishop, once white moves his bishop, we take the c pawn. And yeah, this bishop could be later. If white takes, then we have nothing to worry about. We are very solid here. The bishop now is open, so we don't have to play b6. The knight comes here. We have very fast development. So c takes is not scary. After bishop takes, after dc, bishop takes. Now this bishop seems bad, but we can play b6 and bishop b7. But just remember to castle here as fast as possible. Don't play b6 here and start getting some annoying moves. Now if you block, this move might come, and yeah, it gets a bit annoying. So don't leave the queenside pieces here and just castle immediately. So this is the Panov variation. Now the last one I want to show you is this e5 line, which is the advance. Now the advance is considered on the highest level to be the most ambitious one. There are two moves here, so two sound moves. There's bishop here f5, which is the main line, and it's what I usually play, but you have to know some theory if you want to play it, because there are tons of moves here. There's g4, you have to know how to play. There's h4, there's this line with knight here and knight here. There's knight f3. I mean, there's this line of bishop. I mean, there are many things, and the reply is not very clear if you don't know the variations. So I will show you this move c5. Now c5 has a clear plan. Now let's say white supports his center with c3. Now we could just develop to c6 after knight f3. Remember, we don't play e6 here, we wait, and then knight f3 came. Okay, now we take bishop g4. Now we go bishop g4 with knight here and the queen coming here, and bishop could take here. We have a lot of pressure on the d4 square. And let's say bishop e2. Now to be able to take here with the bishop and keep defending, we go e6. Now we got our bishop out, we go e6. Let's say knight c3, we go queen b6, pressuring the pawn, let's say. These are just some ideas to show. I mean, white doesn't have to play this. White could castle, or white has many options, but this is the principle here. So we go knight c6, we take our bishop out, we go e6, and we pressure this central pawn. White could play knight f3 here also. It's similar, it will transpose most likely. Knight c6, we go bishop here, or bishop f5 in some variations. If let's say this, what is the best move here? Okay, we can take. I mean, after knight takes, now white loses this pawn. So remember, if knight f3 also, if the knight is moved, we go bishop g4 here, and we play e6, we eventually take, and we pressure the central pawn. Now the best move here after c5 for white is actually to take. Believe me, if your opponent is not a good player, he won't play this move. It's very illogical, but we go knight c6 here, and after knight f3, we go bishop there, and now there are many arrows, but after e6 we will eventually win with one of these pawns. So just to show you the idea. I mean, e6, now this is attacked. We can go knight here to attack this. The queen could help attack. We always have this check and queen takes. So we will eventually get the pawn back. We have a solid center, and most importantly, this light square bishop is out of the chain. So this is c5. It's very simple, and yeah, I guess that was it for today. So remember, guys, after e4, c6, in the two knights, we go d5, and later we get our bishop out and we play e6. This is also something we do in the advanced. After c6, d5, this, we go c5. We could go here, and then we get our bishop out, we close the pawn chain. This is the difference between the Caro-Kann and the what's called the French. So in the French, you usually have a problem with this bishop. Now in the Caro-Kann, no, we play c6, d5. Our pawn is not on e6. We get our bishop out, and we play e6. We usually give our bishop for the knight, but it's fine because we build a strong center here on the light squares. So yeah, that was it for today. I hope you enjoyed. I hope you learned something. If you like this series, then just tell me in the comments. I could review more openings. Yeah, thanks for watching, and see you soon. Bye.